cats were just something that I always understood. I always understood them. I could sit in a room and, they would come hang out with me. And so, like, I've always felt connected to felines. Big, small, I love them all. I would love to be able to have a larger sanctuary with big cats on it, but that's a shot in and of itself.
Exotic. Yo guys, what up? It's Juan Garcia. Welcome to the show. Today we have on Alexis Ward, the cat-loving cannabis professional. I'm going to go ahead and let you tell her a little bit about herself and what she's up to right now. We're going to get into her history because I think she's super interesting. That's why I would love to have her on the show. I obviously invited her on as one of my first guests. So Alexis, what are you up to right now?
Man, I am trying to open a cat cafe dispensary. That is my number one goal here in Austin, Texas. And it's go to bed thinking about it, wake up thinking about it. Everything I do during the day is how do I get this going? So that's what I'm doing right now.
So that's super exciting. And describe for the people what that is, a cat cannabis dispensary. To me, that's we've talked behind the scenes, and that's obviously exciting to me, but describe that a little bit more for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if anybody has ever been to a cat cafe, I guess just some origins there too. A cat cafe started back in the late 80s, early 90s in Taiwan. Most people think they started in Japan. They are the biggest in Japan. There are hundreds of them all across Japan. There are about 150 to 200 cat cafes in the United States at this point. There's roughly 6, I think, in the state of Texas. And usually what that looks like is you go into a little spot. There's usually cats walking around, running around, playing, and you can just hang out with the cats. A lot of times they serve you food or they serve you drinks and beverages. And so I think where I'm trying to shift that is, hey, I want to walk into a dispensary. I want to be able to chill with my cat, just hanging out here and be able to buy some gummies or some edibles, something infused, and just kind of hang out, do my work. You read a book, I enjoy spending time with animals in general. And so I think there's a lot of value just mentally, physically to, have that outlet.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I went to a cat cafe in San Francisco. It wasn't cannabis infused, but I wish it was. That would have been a lot cooler, right? So,
absolutely.
We'll get into more of what you're doing right now in a minute, but I would love to give you the chance to tell your origin story, how you got to where you are today. That's what this, podcast is all about, right? Talking to entrepreneurs and just figuring out where it all came from, right? Because we all have different stories. So I would love to give you the chance to tell your story. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience, what made Alexis Ward who she is today?
In the beginning, right? Like this.
Yeah, let's go.
Born and raised in a tiny town in Texas, Lamarck, Texas, really close to Galveston. Most people don't know it. So grew up on the East Coast. Always had an affinity towards animals and pets. I grew up with a lot of pets. We lived out in the country. People would dump pets all the time. And so they'd end up at our house. At one point in time, I had, 12 dogs, 15 cats all at the same time, Awesome. So we always had something chaotic going on. And I think that's where I bonded with that concept of just being around animals. As I moved into my later years, went to Texas State, got my accounting degree.
That's right. I totally forgot you went to Texas State.
Yeah.
Eat them up.
The Wildcats. I'm trying to make it a tradition. I'm trying to convince my daughter to go there now. So
awesome.
My husband graduated from there as well. So we're definitely big Bobcats fans.
Very cool. Very cool. Love it.
So after that, I worked for an insurance company doing accounting, risk pool, entity management. And then I started working for a CPA firm. And my background is government contracting, so very heavy on compliance, heavy on auditing, heavy on pricing. And then after that, after about 6 years at the CPA firm, which was, let me just stop and say, like, it was the best exposure I could have in the accounting world, because working for a small private firm allows you an opportunity to see so many different types of businesses. While I say government contracting as, a lump, I mean, it could have been maid services, or it could have been cybersecurity, or it could have been, it was a broad spectrum of service delivery in small businesses, large businesses. And one of the things I think people don't realize in the accounting world is that it is critical for accountants to really understand how an organization works as a whole. And they should really be brought in early, right, when you're setting up performing, because there's a lot of tax implications of whether you choose to be an LLC or you choose to be an S Corp. So there's all these complexities. And so that experience and exposure at the CPA firm was, skyrocketed me in the trajectory that I wanted to go in. And so I ended up starting at a international development organization. We focus on healthcare in low and middle income countries. And so spent a lot of time working with people in Kenya, Mozambique, Philippines, which, again, a small, tiny Texas girl, getting to meet people from all walks of life across so many different cultures. It's such an amazing experience. And I think it just really helped me to open my eyes to the possibilities of things. So I'm extremely grateful for my trajectory in my career.
Yeah. So that's super interesting. That's super interesting because, as far as my subscribers go on my YouTube right now, I used to host a show called CPA Primetime. So I've interviewed a lot of CPAs, a lot of accountants before. So there might be people stumbling into this new show that I have going on, introducing different entrepreneurs. So it's just like, it's so funny that, you had a history in accounting. That's why I just had immediately on the Hemp Business Builder call, I just had that accounting connection with you, right? I didn't stay in the accounting industry, but I noticed throughout my time getting my master's, or maybe, being in the Accounting Honor Society organization, I just noticed that was actually the best degree to get for entrepreneurship. So why don't you speak a little bit about that? How is that helping you now think about business? You mentioned it a little bit, but I would love for you to expand on how important that just understanding of business is, right? Because I feel it's important, but you've had so much experience. So
I think the one thing that people forget is that numbers can tell a story.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Yeah. I'm excited. Right? You got me excited.
And so, you have to forget that they add up and really take a step and look at the broader picture. And what is the story telling you when you're looking at financial statements, when you're looking at even the mundane day-to-day tasks, right? You get an accounts payable bill coming through, and it's what does this tell you? What is happening within this organization that this invoice is telling you? And you can really leverage that to drive so many different business decisions. And I think that that's the one piece that entrepreneurs tend to forget, because we're shifting from an accountant to an entrepreneur. I've seen, and I'm sure any accountant who's watching this is really why can't these people keep track of their receipts? Why can't these people just do this stuff time after time after time? I'm telling you, as a prior accountant, moving into entrepreneurship, I've struggled with keeping my own books up to date, right? Every months, I'm oh shit, I got to go back, and now I got to reconcile everything, go find everything. So it is a totally different mindset. And I think that entrepreneurs really need to prioritize adding it early, adding those steps early into their processes. Don't be I'll get to it later. Or don't just think that accounting or, closing your books on a monthly basis or reconciling stuff is just so you can get your taxes done. It's so much broader than that. And there's so much strategy involved in really being able to what are you as an organization? That's what your assets tell you, right? That's what your liabilities tell you. How well are you doing? So there's so many elements that we could go into. I think from a cannabis perspective, cost of goods sold.
Yeah, let's talk about the cannabis perspective, actually, because from my accounting experience, I didn't deal with the cannabis industry that much. So just what's on your mind when it comes to that industry and accounting?
It's a really unique perspective being in Texas with a non-recreational, a very small medical space. We're focused a lot on the hemp industry, and that's legal, right? Legal across all 50 states, legal federally. When you get into some of the other states with recreational and all the other variations, there's so much complexity in terms of how you're tracking your books. And so that's the one thing that I think the hemp industry is taking advantage of. They don't have the same issues that you might run into, like if you're a California-based organization or you're an Oklahoma-based organization. You have, from a federal perspective, you're still illegal. So you've got state taxes and filings, you've got federal taxes and filings, and even though you're still in a legal business, you still have to file your federal taxes. So how do you do that, right? But then it's like, okay, so from a tax perspective, you can't claim certain expenses because, you can't deduction.
What's the most, I guess, problematic if we're trying to claim expenses or
anything that's plant touching, you can't take as a deduction on a recreational or a regular cannabis.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, so it gets really, really complex. And so tracking your cost of goods sold and really itemizing things and breaking down, especially if you've got a lot of verticals within your organization, if you're doing distribution and manufacturing and you're growing, you're cultivating, really separating that out and tracking all of the expenses and itemizing things.
Man, that's why I love accounting. I love this.
It's crazy. It can get really complex. And I think even though we don't have that from a hemp perspective, we still run into it on a case-by-case basis, just like we do with banking issues, right? So some banks won't support the hemp industry, even though it's federally legal. So it's the same thing, and it's really about educating people across the board. And I think sometimes we miss the mark with broadening our horizons in terms of education. Like there's an opportunity in so many industries to let them know, like, this is a real industry. We're just not a bunch of potheads sitting around, right? And there's still that stigma. That's what's so interesting, and it's very prevalent. The more I go to events, the more I talk to people, people don't know anything about the cannabis industry. So we, as cannabis professionals, really need to take advantage of this opportunity to educate our friends, educate our families, and really push the message that so we can break that stigma.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. What would you say, when you're talking to just, I don't know, let's say a cannabis entrepreneur at a cannabis event? We were talking about cannabis events the other day, right, on the call. What's most surprising to you as you're talking to them as that business professional? Because I know as an entrepreneur meeting other entrepreneurs, but I have my master's in accounting, right? So I do have, as crazy as I might seem, or you might look at my Instagram and go, wow, Juan's freaking wild. But if you talk to me behind the scenes, I'm very actually strategic, right? So I've met so many entrepreneurs that are actually wild in a sense, right? Without being too strategic. So what's most surprising? Well, what do you tell them to where they're surprised? Because for me, I was surprised about the deductions just right now. I didn't know that, right? So why don't you speak a little bit on that?
It could go a lot of different ways, and I can tell you, I guess I kind of skipped this part. Like, how did I get into the cannabis industry?
Let's talk about it.
So before I answer that, like maybe about 5 years ago, again, I was trying to figure out like what my growth plan was. Where am I going to go after this? Well, I've had such great experience everywhere I've been. I knew that I didn't want to continue in international development. It's really challenging work. It's very politicized. It's highly elite. And so I wanted something different for myself long term. And so I started to research, how do I get into the cannabis industry? I really felt strongly about it because I've had a lot of family members who have benefited very positively from cannabis use. And so I wanted to kind of step into that and use my professional skills to really help elevate the industry. And so at that point, you just start going down rabbit holes, like where do you start, right? And so I think that's part of the challenge when you're talking to an entrepreneur, right? They have this vision, and you want them to have a vision, right? Because you want to be able to stand behind an entrepreneur and support them on that vision.
Definitely.
But sometimes they forget about all the little pieces that make that vision come to life. And so it really is kind of, this is probably... So I watch a lot of kids movies because I have 2 kids, and so things pop into my head all the time. And there is this movie, The Good Dinosaur.
What is it called? The Good
Dinosaur. It's a Disney movie.
Okay.
And so there's this one part where like this crazy it's a Triceratops is like hiding in the bushes, and he's got all these birds like sitting on his horns, and one of them is like a Dream Crusher, and it's like he keeps Dream Crusher as a pet because it helps keep him realistic. And so I tell people, like, sometimes you have to crush an entrepreneur's dreams to pragmatically bring them back down.
Let's be real here.
So they need a dream crusher. Somebody be their dream crusher, because you've got to counterbalance that. Like, bring them out of the cloud sometimes. And it could be, it's mostly compliance. Anything related to compliance is where I find visionaries have a tough time, like, but I want this. Like, we need to go this direction. But there's this thing here. Well, let's just forget it. No, you can't forget it. It could be an employment law. It could be an accounting. It could be just regulatory issues. And so keeping them abreast of what is happening and why it's important to them and their vision that should be the priority for any professional who wants to enter this industry.
So that's super interesting. I think, if you're listening to this, what she just said was a valuable piece of information, because for myself, I've said this on a separate podcast where I've got interviewed, but I didn't become an entrepreneur because I was like, oh, I don't need a boss, or like, oh, no one can, no one can tell me what to do. Because at the end of the day, your clients are telling you what to do, right? So everyone has a boss, everyone has a customer they're working for. If you don't have clients, then you have customers and you're selling people things. Listen to the customers, right? You can't just do anything and go crazy. So it's not all about just like, let's be this crazy entrepreneur and just whatever we want happens. Like, there's that compliance there. And that's what I love about the accounting industry. I love that there's an actual plan and being realistic. There's that strategy there. So, no, that's a refresher. I love that, Alexis.
And that's the other thing too. I'm constantly telling the clients that I work with, like, you have to repeat yourself. Like, don't get bogged down that, you said it once. And this goes on both sides, whether it's the entrepreneur who's pushing that vision or it's the team that's supporting the initiative. Like, repetition is key in this business. Like, you have to keep pushing that message in order for it to be instilled in people. And so,
just
keep saying it.
I have a meeting with a client later today about marketing, and I sort of already know exactly what I'm going to tell him. And I've told him to do the same thing before, but keep pushing that message. Love it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about pets before on our previous call, right? You did talk a little bit about growing up with so many pets. What why cats specifically? I'm a dog guy. I'm not a cat hater. I love a cat. Right. Yeah,
exactly. I'm a cat lady. I'm not a dog hater. Exactly. I love it all. I really do. I think I don't know if it's just the progression, like pet owners now are different from pet owners when I was young. And I'm sure that those were different generational changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've watched an evolution in terms of pet ownership and caring for animals. And just like with cannabis, there's still a lot of education that I'm kind of surprised about when it comes to like animal behavior. Like, are these animals, do they think like we do? You know, we have this anthropomorphization that we kind of do with animals. And I don't think it's all fake. I think that, you know, each one has different personalities. And this goes beyond just mammals, right? Like it could be even lizards. You see these people that have these pet lizards and they bond, or people that have pet spiders and they bond. They recognize you. Yeah, exactly. So I think that cats were just something that I always understood. I always understood them. I could sit in a room and, you know, they would come hang out with me. And so, like, I've always felt connected to felines. Big, small, I love them all. I would love to be able to have a larger sanctuary with big cats on it. But, you know, that's a in and of itself. No selling of animals. No breeding of animals, but I love that journey, and I love to be able to connect with the individual, and it goes beyond humans. I want to know people. I want to know their stories. I want to know animals. I want to know their stories. I want to know who they are, why their behaviors are the way that they are. And cats just tend to be the direction that I go, but I love them all.
So that's amazing, and it's pretty cool that you said something about breeding, because I'm a big supporter of adopt, don't shop, right?
Absolutely.
So why don't you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so part of what I'm trying to do with the Cat Cafe dispensary, which I'm calling the Cat Pharm at this point, is to use the cannabis space to promote feral colonies and caring for animal welfare issues. And so a portion of all of our proceeds goes to TNR, or trap, neuter, release, and caring for local Central Texas colonies. And so we have a couple of organizations that we donate to, you know, and so I absolutely, you know, agree with you. It's a really challenging thing because you've got these beautiful cats, right? And, you know, and sometimes you want to be able to keep that pureness, right? Bengals. I mean, I love a good Bengal. Don't get me wrong. Their spots are gorgeous, and Persians with their beautiful white hair.
I get it. Yeah, I get the same thing with dogs. I love Dalmatians, and it's like,
see, like there is something beautiful about breeding, but you have to. This is where, let's see, what my husband tells me all the time. It's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. And so the love of money can sometimes dilute the why.
Right.
The why we start something, the why we do things. And I think that there are a lot of good intentions in people when they start breeding and they see, you know, how beautiful these animals are. But, you know, when you're pushing one out for $3,000 a pop, $6,000 a pop, you know, it can go bad the wrong way. I know that there are breeders in the world that are doing it sustainably. They're doing it, you know, for the betterment of the breed. And I don't want to knock that at all. And there are those people that are interested in owning those types of animals.
Right.
It's not for me. You can walk down the street and pick up a pet, right? Exactly. And those pets need something. They need your love. They need your attention. They need your care. Definitely. No, so I don't know. I like a good coming up story, right? You know, the underdog, and you know, they get the win, right?
Underdog, let's go.
And I think that there's so much beauty in adopting a mutt. Let's just call them mutts for the sake of you know, like, okay, we don't need a
yeah.
You don't. It's all about their personalities. They're all
just
so
about
different.
Every dog I had growing up, like they were a mutt.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I don't know. There is something special. You hit it Right on the nail.
Yeah, I mean, and even with like the mixed breeds, you start to get these like unique shapes and colors, and every dog has a unique appearance. And that's years and years of breeding for all over the place. You get all kinds of fun stuff. Did you know the last Predator movie that they released? The dog that was in that movie was adopted from a shelter.
Really? That's
Yeah,
cool.
it is cool. And so, it just goes to show like you can get quality animals, you can get good. They're not broken. I think that's what people
broken.
think.
I love it.
They're not broken. They just need a good home. They need care. They need training, just like we all do in some ways. So,
no, I love it. And we talked a little bit about raising money for animals. Shout out to my buddy Steve Fowler. He's the founder of Babes in Toyland, and he does this a lot in places like LA, Miami, Las Vegas. But he's talked about bringing that charity to Texas. So would love to help collaborate on that and involve you as well.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
So we've talked a little bit about cannabis. We've talked a little bit about animals. Why don't we combine the two? What's your opinion on cannabis and animals, right? I mean, you have the Cat Pharm coming out. So
yeah.
I'm super excited to visit, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to launch. We're definitely in our infancy and really working on products right now, making sure that we're getting things that we feel really comfortable with. I do sell people products. I do sell pet products. And so, what I find people interested in most is, giving some anxiety relief to their animals. And like, even though we're cat focused, our products are good for both cats and dogs. Basically, any mammal has an endocannabinoid system and can process CBD and other cannabinoids in their body. And it's really the same type of relief that you would look for from using a CBD product. So anti-anxiety, anti-inflammatory, some things that I hear from my clients. It helps with nausea as well. So traveling in the car, if you've got a dog who gets sick, giving them some CBD before you get in the car can kind of help relieve them from that nausea feeling. If you're introducing new pets, it can help kind of relieve the stress and anxiety of having new animals in your home, or even people. I had a cat that could not stand when I had company. Like he would get up, he would pee blood. Like it was really terrible. Yeah, and so that's one thing too that people, as they learn animal behaviors, if you're not like into like following like how animals are, cats tend to like their stress responses come through their urinary tract. Dogs, it's through their digestion. So that's why, like, okay, if a dog gets scared, he might poop, right?
Yeah.
Cats, they pee, and they typically pee blood. And so if you start to see like blood spots, it's typically stress. And so you can, remove whatever that stressor is, or maybe you can't, right? And so that's where a CBD product comes into play. I've had where if you've got feral cats outside and indoor cats inside, like they're territorial, so they'll fight, and then it causes a lot of stress to the indoor cats. So providing them with a supplement like CBD can kind of help relieve them from that tension. And then old cats, old dogs, animals, they do really well with the anti-inflammatory, the joint relief.
My parents' dog Roscoe, he's getting a little grumpy now that he's older.
Yes. They do. Grumpy.
And then, growing up, my sister's cats, we had a cat that when you took it in the car, it liked to just go chill on the back seat and like feel the sun. And then we have this other cat that just like goes absolutely crazy in the car. So we got to put it in the little like cage. Right? That might be the one that wants the CBD to chill out.
Absolutely. Kind of help them relax, help them sleep, get them through a long car ride, get them through going to a vet. Absolutely. So we're working on some formulations as well, like with chondroitin, which is good for joint pain. And I think a lot of dog owners probably give that to their older dogs or larger dogs that tend to have a lot of joint pain already. And so it
Right.
just helps, like working together, like symbiotically, is what we're looking for. So we have some sprays, we have some treats, we have tinctures. Those are usually the best way. One of the things for people listening that I always want to, it's really easy in the cannabis industry for people to just push their products, sell their products, sell their
Mhm.
products. If your animal is already on some type of psychotic, I do not recommend giving them a CBD product. It's
Okay.
really only for people who have not tried a psychotic yet or want to wean their animals off of it. And that's just because of the way the compound interacts with those other medications. So if
Right.
you're giving the animal something already, that CBD is going to block the medicine from actually getting where it needs to go. And
Okay.
so I think it's really important because a lot of people that go to the store and they'll want to buy a CBD product for fireworks, for example. My dog needs to calm down because we're going to be popping fireworks later. But
Right. Right. Oh my God.
yeah,
Yes.
I got them all. But if you've already got them on some kind of medication, like you have to just be really careful. And so I always ask that of people, and I think it's really important. And I think the other piece is that THC specifically
Hmm.
is toxic for some dogs. I
Okay. I didn't know
have
that.
that some large dogs do well with small amounts of THC,
Hmm.
but every animal is different, just like every person is different. So you're going to have to kind of test and play and find the right strains, find the right product for you. But typically dogs are intolerant to it, just like a chocolate. But and I use
Yeah.
chocolate as an example because I actually had a dog that ate chocolate every day and never got sick.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
So
snap.
yeah, he loved M&Ms, loved it. So
Yeah.
give it an M&M or two. Like, what?
Right.
So, it is up to your discretion, but I think it's important for people who are interested in giving CBD or cannabis products to their pets. Like, go for a broad spectrum. Start with a broad spectrum. If you're not getting the relief that you need, then maybe consider a full spectrum product. And I would typically only use a full spectrum products for dogs or animals that are larger than 50 pounds.
Okay. That's super interesting. Honestly, that's great to know. And if you have any questions and you're listening to this, I hit Alexis up.
Absolutely.
I'm putting her Instagram in the description. So go ahead
Awesome.
and ask her any questions if you're unsure,
Thank
because
you. Yes, I want all the questions because the more I hear from others, the more I learn, and
Mhm.
I love to learn. So send them my way.
Definitely, definitely. So what what do you see, what are you most excited about, whether it's the cannabis industry or anything in the animal industry or just business in general? What This is a question I ask everyone. What are you excited about in business just going forward? Right, we're in 2022 right now. We just got over the pandemic. I have very low overhead, but I did see my clients go through some tough things during the
Yeah.
pandemic. Right now we're on the opposite side and things are starting to pick back up. People are starting to, get their stuff together again. And even if they're still toughing it through, they're starting to clean up. Right. So personally, I'm most excited about seeing a lot of entrepreneurs back in the on the horse, so to speak, right? Back on the saddle. Right.
Back in the
Uh,
saddle again.
yeah. Yeah. And I know you're a newer entrepreneur, but I don't want to discount your experience, just period. Right. So, what are you most excited about going forward?
I think there's a couple of things that are happening in not just in the cannabis space, but in the workforce. And I
Mhm.
think the number one thing is the shift in how Americans prioritize their health, their well-being, and what they do for a living. Because I
Mhm.
think that for a long time, a very, very long time, years and years and years, our big push has been work, 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 work.
Mhm.
But are we getting the value that we need as individuals from just working for the weekend, so to speak, right? We
Mhm.
work 8 hours a day, can hardly get anything done. The stress is following us home. And I think that there's a huge shift in the need to change employment practices across the board to meet a younger generation, a younger workforce's needs to feel like they're getting what they need out of their job. Mm-hmm. And that's not one industry, it's across the board. And if corporations do not meet them in the middle, you're going to continue to see this exodus. You're going to continue to see people who are not willing to work in the food industry, for example, right?
Interesting.
Why can't I get an oil change? Why is there only one guy working at every single thing?
Yeah.
Why are we not asking this question, right?
Yeah.
How do we make this job more fulfilling for people? It's not all money. Can't be.
Right.
They keep adding money to what they're paying people, and they still can't keep people. So either it's mistreatment, either the job is not rewarding, either consumers are mistreating people. So what is it? What is it, and where do we need to focus and prioritize so we can shift that so everybody is better supported? Mm-hmm. So with that being said, the second thing that I see, and this is a byproduct of the pandemic, is when you start to have pressure, new things arise. And so there's a lot of change happening. And what I'm excited to see with these new entrepreneurs is like, what are these innovations that are going to come out of the problems that existed, that are now going to be solved and challenged? So back to the food workers, for example, are we going to see robots taking over? Like, we're starting to see the robot coffee makers. We're starting to see the robot burger flipping. What does that really look like? And is there going to be an evolution there? So that's just one example. But I think that, for those visionaries out there, now's the time. This is the perfect opportunity for you to put that crazy idea out there. Right. Somebody needs it. So what problem are you solving? Bring it. I'm ready.
So that's super interesting that you say that because that's actually why, I quit the accounting industry, right? Because I was working 120 hours per week, 7 days a week. Obviously, I didn't need to do that. I could have went with a smaller firm, right? But I was just like, God dang, dude, I'm seeing people 10 years older than me cry in the office, But
that's what they tell you to do, right? Like, that's the norm. You got to go to the big four. You got to work 100 hours a week. You got to put in your time. No, it shouldn't be that way.
That's interesting. Because I was like, at least for me, I can put in some hard work, right? But for putting in that hard work, I would at least want a better reward than what I was seeing, because I was like, that's what I was looking at. I was looking at, my superiors, the partners and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, like, I love them. They're great people. But I was like, do I really want to be like these dudes? I don't know, man. so like, let me go, like, follow my dreams of starting my marketing business, right? So with the accounting industry specifically, that's actually somehow I'm always going to end up. Sorry, guys, if you're bored about the accounting, but I'm just going to keep coming back to it. I love the industry so much. What do you think could help the accounting industry specifically? Just period, right?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that always come to mind with accounting. I think number one, it goes back to value add in terms of how you treat your employees and what are you asking them to do? Are you asking them to do shitty work? Because, that doesn't reward people really. So, in that case, like, how can we automate? I push automation. Get rid of the dull, boring work already. There are so many tools and resources out there, and like, really push your employees to embrace technology. Mm-hmm. I think that we're getting there, and I think it's just awesome. the transition of generations, right? Like, I'm on the millennial cusp here. I grew up with no phone. I didn't get my first phone until I was 18, and then so I've had a little bit of both, the analog and the technology. Right. But everybody behind me, like, I was 18, my niece was 8 we got our phones at the same time, right?
Yeah.
She's much more adept. She's, ready to take on that technology, but there are so many tools and resources out there to really change our processes and make things easier for people. And that's what, we really need to bring that in and not focus so much on some of the outdated practices. That's where the innovation needs to happen as well within process. So there's a lot to be said with technology. I think accountants in general should look at themselves as IT professionals. I don't think that they should just consider themselves accountants. You can't be anymore. You should be paperless. Everybody should be paperless at this point. There's no reason to bring me a file of papers this day.
A room full of boxes of papers.
Absolutely. Or file cabinets from 10, 20 years.
That was my first internship in high school, actually. I had to go to a CPA office in downtown San Antonio and turn a room full of boxes of papers, into just scan them, right? That was pretty interesting. That doesn't have anything to do with real accounting work. That was just in high school. But
I call it pre-accounting at this point, and it's its own evolutionary thing. The pre-accounting work needs to be as important as the actual accounting. So I think you were doing the right thing. I had a similar job.
Awesome. I love it.
I think it's a rite of passage for accountants to have to sift through papers. We don't get to wear the green hats anymore and use the big things, but you got to clean a cabinet of papers and receipts.
So real quick, back to accounting. My dad makes fun of me sometimes because I'm like, I'm gonna own the coolest accounting firms in Texas because no one's gonna be able to compete with us on the marketing front, right? I'm just gonna market people's eyeballs out, kind of like the lawyer you see in town, right? And everyone knows their name. Why don't they know the CPA? So I'm getting ready to help them out with that. But why, let me ask you this question, because you do have a lot of accounting experience. You have more accounting experience than me. I was just a baby in accounting, right? And then I did help a lot of cool firms grow, though, right after I left PwC.
Don't discount your experience, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But what could accountants do better to market themselves, in your opinion?
I always used to say when I was applying for accounting jobs, what I would put on there is the fun accountant, right? I think people have this perception of what an accountant does because the work can sometimes be a bit doldrum, right? You've got to go through spreadsheets, you've got to run through numbers, you're calculating stuff all the time. And so I think it's don't take yourself so seriously. I think the marketing evolution is that it's not about just professionalism anymore. It's about authenticity. So bring your personality to your work. You can't separate the two anymore. You just can't. You have to be who you are. Otherwise, you then yourself lose value in the work. So I think that in a marketing perspective, you have to consider yourself, and this goes for all of the accountants that work within a firm.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You are
exactly what I was thinking.
You have an opportunity here to really define who you are as an accountant, and there's not enough of that. Accountants are behind the scenes. They get shoved in a corner. They get nobody knows what they do half the time, right? Get out there, promote your skills. You have something that someone else doesn't, and you should be really proud of it, and you should be pushing it. And that's, for the individual, not just the leaders of your firm.
That's interesting because you almost read my mind there on it, even if you're in a firm and not an entrepreneur, right? It's always the person, honestly, from what I've seen, is a person in a firm makes it really far if they just have a great personality, right? I mean, I've seen so many people will become partners just for that almost, it looks like just almost that reason alone.
Yeah, they may not even know what they're doing, right?
What the hell?
They're outsourcing their work to so and so around the corner, right? So
yeah.
I've seen it.
So that's super interesting. And I know we were on the hemp business builder call the other day, and I spoke a little bit about influencer marketing. And I think the cannabis industry is really interesting because from what I've seen and going in and helping people like Dalton, helping people like Leah, although cannabis sounds way more exciting than accounting, it almost has the same problem to where cannabis entrepreneurs are also taking themselves too seriously in terms of, I'm going to educate this person about that, or I'm going to educate that person about that. And I understand education is a big deal, but it's almost like, 90+% of the people don't actually care about the education, right? So I'm super excited to go to the Cat Pharm and see how you're going to mix in that education with something fun, like animals and actually consuming, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is, and
it's
it's
like the dream concept, honestly.
I mean, I do love the concept, to be honest, like just because it's so obscure, and I've yet to run into another one, and so I do definitely want to take advantage of it. I am not a marketer. I'm making up stuff as I go. It's kind of scary. It's like I hear this word content all the time. Like, what does content really mean? If I have to hear content one more time,
content.
And like, is that just me? A video? Am I supposed to be making something in a nice little Canva? I don't know.
You know what? I talk to my clients about the same thing. Have you been on TikTok at all?
No, so I haven't done TikTok at all yet. I've focused mostly on Instagram. I have a Facebook that's connected. Sometimes I do different stuff, mostly articles. Like if I come across a cat article, I'll push that out because, why not?
You know what's really cool? Okay, so I'm going to give this tip to everyone as well as you. I tell my clients, because they'll send me things like, we should make this cool TikTok to like sell insurance and then do a little skit, right? So I'm actually stealing this concept from Gary Vee, but he's like, dude, yes, you could go viral if you're really good at making that concept or doing the cool little dance, but like, that's not you, right? You're not already doing that. So don't spend time doing that. Instead, have a podcast, cut this little clip, and then put that on TikTok. So personally, that's what I'm doing. Like, I might do a little dance, maybe if I'm in the mood, but I'm not gonna come up with that concept. It's gonna be something cool that I say on a podcast. For my accounting clients, that's what actually changed their lives, right? Is having a podcast. Then they give some cool little advice in 60 seconds. Then you cut that clip, put it on a place like LinkedIn, and they get business from that, right? So that's what I would say to everyone that's like looking at content creators and being like, do I have to do this crazy little dance or come up with this yeah.
Learn this little clip of words so I can word it right, and then
no. Sometimes even I'm actually a comedian is actually my client, and it's not like you don't tell her, oh, make a joke like on the spot. That's not how comedians work, right? She actually does better. Just she's funny in conversation. So I'm like, instead of, trying to come up with like a joke or a little skit, you should do a podcast as well. And then you're going to say something funny on the podcast, inevitably, right? Because you're just a funny person. If you're a great business person, inevitably, you're going to give like some great advice on the podcast. And then people are going to look at that, want to do business with you. So that's a little tip that
I think it's a great tip, and I think you're onto something, just in conversation. And that's kind of how I've approached the education piece too. It's not like, hey, I'm pushing this on you because you need to know you don't know. It's like, if you're interested and you ask me questions, then I'm going to, engage. And that's when I'm at events currently, which I do 2 to 3 a week, they
Nice.
tend to, I like to talk. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if I didn't. So I find that just having conversations with people and getting to know people is very rewarding, and you can get a lot of things out of it.
Your video stopped a little bit right here.
Uh-oh.
Okay, no, it's back. But I'll cut that little piece. But
That's
yeah,
fine.
it is very rewarding. And let's see, I was gonna say something that, that distracted me a little bit.
Sorry.
No worries.
I can show my Rolling Fatty shirt.
Hey, that's a cool shirt. Show the audience. Show the audience.
Let's see. Can you see
Rolling
it?
Fatties. Love it. Love it. Interesting. So I forgot. I totally forgot what I was gonna say, but you're in the cannabis industry. I feel like I can ask you this. What's your favorite way to consume?
Smoking is my favorite, and
Yeah.
I think that it's mostly it's the instant gratification part of it. Like, I don't want to have to sit and wait for things to kick in.
Love
So
it.
yeah, that's
Same.
part of it. It's like maybe I'm a control freak. Maybe it's the accountant.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And so then I can also time it, right? Like, I can time like when, all right, I'll be good, and I can
for
move.
sure.
So that's my number one. I do like infused foods.
Nice.
So it's a little different. I have to be conscious of dosage. And so I have to be like in the right mindset for that. And that's more of like my recreational approach. But I use CBD products every day. And, I was an avid THC smoker, everything up
Right.
until recently, when I started to really navigate into my own products. I've moved into a Delta 8 product almost exclusively.
Right.
I went through the process of finding the strain that I liked and what I wanted to feel from it, right? So it was very intentional in my process. And so I'm currently using a strain called Cat Daddy.
Oh, that's cool.
So all the strains that I carry on my people product, everything's cat themed. So I carry 3 strains: Cat's Meow, Stray Cat, and then Cat Daddy is my Delta 8 product.
Nice.
And it's a very head heavy, not body heavy, which I don't like that like slouchy kind of like almost think both a feeling. And it
do
really
you like to walk around and think about business? Because that's how I find myself.
journaling.
Yeah.
I love to journal, and so I will sit out and just like it opens and expands.
Ideas. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
the same
love
thing.
that. Yeah.
I find the same thing. I don't journal, but I do make notes in my phone, and I feel like I wouldn't have made those notes otherwise.
Yeah, it's interesting, like when you're an actual business person, like how you want to think about business all the time. Like what?
Yeah, I love it.
You talk to people about their businesses, they probably get annoyed. Like I'll interject, like people who don't even ask for my help. I'm like, hey, I want to talk about your business. Why don't you tell me?
I love it.
It's a bit annoying, I'm
we
sure.
have a perfect guest on today, guys. Go tell her about your business. She'll give you advice, is what she's saying.
Absolutely. I love it. So
okay, I remember what I was speaking of business, I remember what I was gonna get to before, but you mentioned, pulling up articles. Here's another little content tip for the audience. And I've done this a couple times. I've advised my clients to do it. And I'll tell you how I'm going to revisit it in the future, in the very near future. But what you could also do is get on Zoom, pull up that article, record yourself, and actually go through the article. And as you're reading it, talk about it and talk about your opinions and your stance on it. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look at commercials and the way that people are marketing. And I'm going to talk about it. Right. Online.
Yeah.
I'm gonna record that on Zoom with my little square in the top, and then we're going to watch the commercial together, or how people are marketing together, whether that's Pfizer or something exciting, something more exciting. Right. That's a little tip. If you don't want to interview people or have guests on for a certain episode, let's just say pull up an article, record yourself, and let's go through it together, guys.
So who is it right now, and it doesn't matter what industry, that you think has really good content?
Really good content, man. You just can't beat. Oh man, I hate this because marketers ruin everything. You just can't beat the marketing industry. It's like guys like Gary Vee. It's guys like, even though he was a scammer on Wall Street, basically, guys like Jordan Belfort, right? People that have good content. I think, you heard someone say, you heard someone say this on the call the other day. He used the word sex worker, which I don't usually use. I use influencer and OnlyFans girls. I let them use that word if they want to. Like they usually use the word SW, right? But I've seen people just, make content with beautiful women, right? And that's what I see gets eyeballs. I've talked about this before. I'm a student of how people actually act. So I don't believe people get online on Instagram in the morning to look at guys. I think they get on there to look at girls, and girls get on there to look at girls as well. And they want to see what.
I don't know if I do it in the mornings, but but I like to look at both. I'm not going to lie. But I like that, your behavior is, you're following the patterns, right?
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
So what about you? What do you see out there? Who are people paying attention to?
That's the hard part, because some of it, I feel like I'm a little cynical when it comes to marketing.
I love it. No.
How do I?
That's the accounting in
you. I don't know how to differentiate when there's so much stuff out there. Sex sells, I totally agree, but that's not going to work for every company.
And
right?
I'll say this too, because I had to get over it learning from people. Like if you've been listening to this podcast, you've heard me talk about Michael Sartain. I've coached for him, and I'm going to coach for him again in the coming month and help his students out. But one of the things that he talks about is that sex sells, right? But you can't be upset about it. So might as well use it instead of being like, I don't know, like complaining online about how, especially as a guy, if you're a guy listening to this, you can't be mad that girls get drinks for free, right? You can't be mad that, guys got to pay $20 to get in the club and then it's ladies free, right? That's just how the world works. Let's not complain. Instead, let's just have, we got to make more money. Oh, well, stop complaining and start making more money. But go on, Alexis, you're going to say something. It's interesting because like my brain pops all over the place. So like I actually ran into this issue too with a recent client. Again, I'm not a marketing person, but like when we're looking at the populations or the demographics that are coming to his business, there's no ladies. And I was like, the one thing that I'm thinking to myself is like, if you want to build your client base, you need to bring in more ladies.
Right.
Yeah. It's part of it is because bringing in more ladies is going to bring in more men.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know, I don't know where that comes from because again, no marketing background. It's just like that's just the way I see the world, right?
That's very interesting. When I started my t-shirt business back in college, one of my first businesses it was the ladies who bought most of the shirts. And then the ladies got their boyfriends, let's say, to spend money if they didn't have the money. So there you go, guys. Market to the ladies. That's your marketing tip.
Exactly. Hater.
I think the ladies are gonna love your place, by the way.
I hope so.
The Cat Pharm. Now they're gonna love
it. The cat ladies and the cat daddies. You'd be surprised. And that's one of the things that's been so amazing for me because when I first started doing events, I was like, all right, I know this is a weird concept. Like, how are people going to react to this? And
you think it's weird? I think it's exciting. I'm sure other people maybe think
that's my fear, right? right? Like when you start to introduce your ideas, like I think everybody has like a fear, like how is this going to be greeted, right?
For sure.
I definitely stepped over the hump. I'm for it.
Yeah.
I didn't, but you're like, you're afraid. Like maybe somebody's like, oh, that's stupid, right? You don't want somebody to talk shit about your stuff.
Right.
But I'm way past it. What is really cool for me is that you don't see a wide variety of people in the cat space. When you think of a cat lady, you think of the lady on The Simpsons, right?
Yeah. That's what Dalton said the other day. He was like, "Oh yeah, the cat lady." I was like, "I don't."
Yeah, I tell people too. Don't worry, you don't have to remember my name. Just yell "cat lady." I'm gonna turn around. So I own it. I totally own it. But I'm meeting people of all walks of life who love cats, and the representation needs to change. And so I think that there's an opportunity for people to connect, demographically, where maybe they hadn't before, over their love of animals. And specifically, this is something we didn't get into. We don't probably have time to get into, but I come from a mixed race background. My mom is Black. My dad is white. There's a low population of African Americans who will embrace their cat ladiness. They don't come out.
Think about that. They
don't come out and say it. And so even my own cousin, he's like, I like cats too, but I won't tell anybody because the culture will take me down. And I'm like, no, we need you. I need you to step up, man. There's a guy called the Trap King in Atlanta. I love him. He's one of my favorite cat influencers. Everybody go follow him. He does trap, neuter, release in Atlanta. I love it. The kitten link. That's another one. I'll throw her name out there if you guys want to follow some other cat people.
Nice.
We need it. We need more representation of all walks of life so that it's not the Simpsons lady.
Love it. So Michael Sartain, who lives in Las Vegas, and he has a podcast now, but he knows a lot of influencers, and he adopts a lot of cats, right? So one thing that he says for his birthday, it's actually coming up. I think I'm going to be in Las Vegas for it. But he's like, guys, you don't have to do anything for my birthday. I would appreciate it if y'all went and adopted a local cat, right? So it's pretty interesting, like the way influencers just are appreciative of animals so much. Speaking of that, here's where I was getting. I'm actually going to show up to your place when it opens. I'm going to show up with a couple of influencers, a couple of model friends, and a couple of media friends, and we're going to make pictures. And I might not be living in Austin at the time. I might be living in Las Vegas, but I'm going to make it a point to do something like that over there.
I love that. I can't wait. So fingers crossed. I wish I knew when this was all going to come together, right?
That was my next question, actually. Go ahead.
I really, when I started this journey, I just recently left my job to do this full time. So August 31st. So September 1st is when I was like, all right, shit's going down. I got to make something happen quick.
It's very recent. There were action takers on the podcast.
That's right, action takers. But, keep in mind, it's been a 5-year journey in my head and on paper. So... now it's like, okay, we're really going to take these steps and we're going to do this. So I'm hoping before the end of next year to really be in a brick and mortar. We're looking on the south side of Austin near the Slaughter Menchaca area. I'm South Austin through and through. I won't be moving anywhere else. I will rep South Austin to the day I die. So.
Love it. Hey, next year is looking like a good year for some reason. I just have so many special thoughts about it. Next year is looking like a good year. So rooting for you. Let's get it. Anything that you want to leave the people with? Where can they find you? Any last minute advice?
www.thecatpharm.com. You can pretty much get to me everywhere through my website. I've got an Instagram. It's easier to go through my website than for me to tell you the handle.
And I'll put it, speaking of that, I'll put it all below in links, guys. So don't worry about typing it in. Just tap the link.
Yeah, very good. And I'll be doing this and, giving people business advice. So holler at me if you have questions. I'm down for the cause. I want the cannabis community in Texas specifically to get with the times. And so I'm here.
The times. Let's go. Come on. I love it. I knew I had you on for a good reason. Well, that was amazing, Alexis. I appreciated having you on. And,
Anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. We're gonna do another podcast when you actually open. All right.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Thanks, Alexis.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.